Hey guys, today we have AXiS artist John J.R. Robinson, Grammy Award winner, Iowa Hall of Fame winner, and Rock Gods of Hall of Fame, Modern Drummer DVD of the Year, 30 #1 all-time hit records, has more than 10,000 recording sessions for albums, movie, TV soundtracks. Also, his signature groove played a part of 66 Grammy-winning records, over 200 Billboard 100 songs, as well as more than 500 million of units sold, earning him a permanent spot in Rolling Stone magazine's top 100 drummers of all time list. Welcome, John, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Zed. And it's my pleasure as always, man.
I'm really excited to be here and excited to just dive into your career and ask you some questions about, I would say, like, it's a legendary career, and I would like maybe some of our followers, subscribers, and the world to know more about your past. So let's dive right into it. First question is, can you tell us more about how you got started in music and what actually drew you to play the drums?
I had very, very influential parents, and my dad was named as Jack and mom Helen. Jack was an optometrist, but he also ran the local town chorus, played violin, and played piano. So there was always music coming out of him. He started me playing piano when I was 5. Mathematically, I think I was still premature, even though I played it, and I felt a little bit of like he was a tyrant a bit, trying to, how come you can't do that? Well, it was because I wasn't mathematically ready yet. But at the same time, my mother was doing the opposite of that with me and teaching me about a word called swing, and playing me these big band records, and playing me Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich and all these great drummers, and talking about swing bands and Woody Herman and Count Basie, and talk about how, a couple swing and what swing is, and just the feeling of the groove. So that led me into, naturally, I started playing drums by the grace of God at age 7. That was kind of what led me in, and I never stopped.
That's awesome. That's great to start at an early age. That's literally when your brain is being formed. So like establishing habits at that age just like gives you like long life techniques and skills.
Even though I had bad habits, obviously, being self-taught in those days. So,
Just to dive into like a little more down the line in your career, what are one of the most memorable moments or highlights of your career so far? I know there should be many, but like this, what's on the top of your head?
I mean, first I went to Berklee College of Music, and I became one of the 50 all-time alumni at Berklee. But once you get out of school, the old joke is, if you're still going to school, you're not working. So I had to get out of school to start working. Once I left college, I started gigging more and more and more. It was kind of like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Am I going to stay in Boston? Am I moving to New York? So I had a band in 1978 called Shelter. We happened to be playing a tour in Ohio. We were being shadowed by the great Rufus and Chaka Khan. And they came down and saw me play one night and sat in with me, and then asked me to move to Los Angeles. That was one of the greatest moments of my life. It was the break.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can go down a list of great things that have happened. I mean, even in high school, I was always very successful because I turned pro when I was 10.
Wow.
And I stuck with that because I always wanted, once I got a taste of that and playing as a child, I remember saying I was 10, and I was saying to my 9-year-old guitar player, I go, I really like this, man. And we just got paid, and from today on I'm a professional drummer. And so I always stuck with that. So those are things. But I won awards in high school, and it was, I knew that there was some special stuff. But that first break is then, once you get it, what do you do with it? So that was one of the biggest ones.
That's awesome. And also that was the act that you won your first Grammy with.
With Rufus and Chaka Khan. Yes. Yeah, which I am in touch with everybody right now, actually. So that's some future talk there.
That's amazing. That's definitely inspirational. So let's talk a little bit about your influences.
Yes.
Who were your biggest influences when you were learning to play drums?
As a kid, when I started switching into like thinking I'm going to be a jazz drummer, like I'm classifying myself. Yeah. because of this influence of big band. So it was Buddy Rich. We all listened to Buddy Rich because we saw him on television.
Yeah.
And he became almost a cartoon character of himself.
Yeah.
And I go, wow, this is kind of cool. And, you know, thinking about that, I got into, of course, the British invasion hit, you know, as I'm a product of the 60s. And, you know, when the Beatles first hit, I wasn't into it because I watched my sister Googling eyes all over the four guys. And I'm going, you know, and I go, I can play guitar. So I started playing guitar just because of that.
Yeah.
But I started like looking at the second generation, like Dave Clark 5 Animals on.
Yeah.
And then I got into Cream. When I was 12, I had a Cream clone band.
Wow.
Which was really great. And I was singing in the bands. And so that kind of led into it. And then, you know, then we hear about Chicago and this funk rock horn band.
Yeah.
Well, what is this? It's just like, it's like a big band with balls.
Yeah.
And so we always started watching, you know, Chicago with Danny and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then things changed with Deep Purple in 68. Deep Purple, you know, did a song called Hush. And it was just really great. And you realize how great Ian Pace is as a drummer.
Oh, wow.
And still to this day.
Yeah.
And because he plays like Buddy Rich, but he's a rock drummer.
Yeah.
In other words, so he understands the capabilities of swing, of how to swing, and he's playing swing within his backbeats, which is how I play. And so Ian and I have become close. Then Led Zeppelin came, and they changed the bar. And even still to this day, the simplistic riffs of Led Zeppelin, as complicated as it was when we were listening to it, compared to music we're hearing today, is quite complicated. Yeah. Well, the people don't want complicated. That's why Led Zeppelin still is, to me, the greatest rock band of all time. The Beatles, granted, would be the greatest sales of all time. So, and then I started getting into mainstream, you know, Miles and Horace Silver and Herbie and Tony Williams, and then we can talk about drummers in a second.
So that's amazing. I remember also Fireball was a very, very important song for me growing up. That was the first song I heard by Ian Pace. And let's talk about technique and style. How would you describe your drumming style, and how did it evolve over the years?
Again, I mean, I started playing in 1963.
Yeah. So it was all swing back then.
It was swing, and it was also a traditional grip.
Yeah.
However, the right hand, like when I first set out on the drum set, I held the drumstick wrong. My left hand wasn't, the stick wasn't like this. It was like that. Yeah. And I who knew?
Yeah.
But I know that I played the right stick right. And the first thing I ever did was play a swing groove.
Yeah.
First thing. And it sounded good. But going through all these different rock bands, big bands, I used to play in the Iowa big band when I was a teenager with all these pros, and I played a short stint with the Tommy Dorsey band. So I got to read those Buddy Rich charts. And then but the rock bands realizing to get velocity out of your left hand playing traditional grip, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And we know several cats that are still playing that way. But I chose slow transition into match grip. Yeah. And then when I got to Berkeley, I started playing more and more, and I realized that the left hand was 10 years behind the right hand.
Yeah, because of the grip.
And us being forced how to march, literally, we weren't marching with Kevlar drums. I was using an old Slingerland chrome drum with a friggin' Mylar head. It sounded like crap at 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And I was breaking snare drums and blah, blah. So you're forced to play that way. So I started vigorous work. And what I realized was my left hand and arm, I'm a position of thumbs up, timpani technique, or rolling back to traditional palms down. Always having the fingers on the sticks and going anywhere between. If I'm playing on a ride cymbal or a floor tom, it's thumbs up, not palms down, because what happens is you'll get carpal tunnel syndrome eventually. Yeah. The left hand then developed from this thumbs up thing where I would actually roll my wrist all the way around and hit the stick between the tip and the shank, all sorts of different ways to create timbres that help with the phrasing of what you're playing. So I'm not totally symmetrical at all. The left hand is totally different than the right hand.
Yeah, so it's all about like adapting throughout your career to whatever sound. So it looks like you're following the sound that you want to create, and also like being mindful of being able to play for the longest time ever, so so you don't hurt yourself.
Well, that's of course, and you know, that's a whole nother subject about how drummers always hurt themselves and don't mean to. But it's also about the groove that I was playing and how am I adapting, like not playing straight 16th notes or swung 16th with just one hand. I go, screw that, man, I don't want to do that shit. So I started playing double stroking 16th notes, but getting more accents and then dealing with the percussionist. What is he going to play, or are we eliminating that? And then coming up with these grooves that were indicative of that stylistic change that I implemented.
That's awesome. That's definitely like, I'm going to remember this for me also. So let's talk a little bit more about session work. You've played on so many iconic recordings. Can you share with us? I know you shared already a couple of stories, but like, can you share with us another story about your time being a session musician?
When I was at Berkeley, my second year, I met the head of the engineering department. His name is Joe Hostetler. We didn't have studios at Berkeley. There was just one little room. They asked me, have you ever recorded in a studio before? I go, no. And in those days, it was a Scully 8-track. It was like this big R2-D2 looking thing with only 8 tracks. And I go, no. I go, well, why don't you bring your drums over and set them up? So I go, all right. I had a 1972 Gretsch Walnut Bebop set. Nice. And I still have it here. It's pristine. I bought that for $325.
When was that?
In 1973.
Wow.
And that's like one of the icon kits. So I brought that in and I go, oh, we don't even need toms. So I set it up. I come in and they go, you know, you're replacing a very famous drummer. And I know who it is. And I'm not going to ever say who it is out of respect. But this particular famous drummer couldn't play with the click track. So I came in, and they put a chart, and it's the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, some chart from Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, and it's got the part. I can't remember if it was a drum part or not. They go, you're going to hear a click. I go, what's a click track? I go, oh, well, it's this metronomic, awful tone that you're going to hear to keep you in line with the track. I go, okay, cool. I'm going to hear 4 clicks, then play the chart. I go, okay, click, click, click. Whatever. Top to bottom, got done. Want to do another song? Yeah, sure. So I ended up redoing the whole damn Berkeley library and got to leave my drums in this original early recording studio. I thought that was actually very cool. I mean, there's thousands of songs we could talk about. I mean, We Are the World, we're talking about in my book that's coming out, King of the Groove. But there's other sessions like Steve Winwood or David Lee Roth when we were at Power Station in New York. I had not worked with a lot of these guys. It was Willie Weeks on bass and Edgar Winter was on it. And, you know, what are we using? All right, we're going to hear a click. And I think I had a Uri click program. That's how we did it with like Michael Jackson's.
That was like one of the first time click was being used.
Well, yeah, because they used these for film and they were 7 frames. So you had to dial in a tempo. I programmed, we felt what was right and programmed it and recorded with these cats. And so that just became my thing about recording with different artists. And I always used to ask Bruce Sweeney, famous engineer, Quincy's engineer, why are we using click? Why aren't we just cutting? Because, you know, I've got really good time. We're cutting, so if I have to go in and make an edit, this is what he told me in 78 and 9, that we're going to cut off the click and your bass drum. Yeah. Isolate everything but your bass drum and the click. And then that then becomes the cut point. I go, okay. Nothing ever changed. I always learned about the click is your friend. Yeah. You know, and I know that, you know, we're all in different kinds of musicalities here, but I specifically talk about pop, rock, or R&B, or modern jazz. Everything has been done with a click, or most of the writers are using machines to inspire. I'm not necessarily a proponent of that, but I kind of went away from other sessions. I mean, I can talk about All Night Long with Abraham Laboriel Sr. playing bass and Lionel playing a CS1 keyboard, and we cut that with a Uri click as a trio. And when you listen to All Night Long now, it's got all this stuff that's layered on it. But we cut that as a trio. Wow. There was nothing on there. And so that why it was so pure. Everybody could hear each other breathing and feeling it. So that was kind of the magic of a song. I mean, I can go down hundreds of lists if you want.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, so since you just mentioned Quincy Jones, so let's get into that a little.
Oh, him.
About the initial collaboration, how did you first start working with Quincy Jones?
I first tried to start going to his jazz camp.
Yeah.
In South Dakota, which was southern Iowa. I was like north of Kansas City. So for my dad to drive me there, it was too far. My dad said, no. I go, crap. So I then joined Rufus, moved to Los Angeles, and Mark Hartley, manager, set me up with going to a concert called The Orchestra, and it was down at Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in 1978. A little did I know, they sat me right by Quincy. It's almost like we were set up. And he goes, yeah, man, you're John Robinson. You're the drummer from Berkeley, right? I go, yeah. He goes, man, that's where I went. I go, well, I know that. You went Schillinger House / Berkeley. And he always said, yeah, man, I always liked musicians that come out of Berkeley, for his bands and stuff. And I was like, well, okay. and we had done a solo record with Rufus called Numbers on ABC Dunhill. Now, granted, ABC Dunhill was Steppenwolf, Crusaders, Steely Dan, and Rufus. We were the last four left on that label before we all got kicked off and the label went out. So he goes, man, I heard the record you did, really like it. I go, oh, cool, man. And it's nice meeting you, blah, 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 blah. Shaka had split to do a solo record, and management put together a reunion record, Master Jam, and Quincy Jones is going to be the producer. He was asked, do you want to get a famous studio drummer, I wasn't famous then, to play drums? He goes, no, I really like this John Robinson guy. Let's use him. And I go, I was just like, wow, this is unbelievable. It's like, and I wasn't thinking of anything like other than this is cool. Yeah. I'm like, you're not going to like start worshiping and shit. But it was like, we went over to his house and I met Peggy Lipton and little babies running around and we were talking about concepts and he was great. And so we started coming in and started recording.
Can you describe the dynamic and your working relationship and how does it go whenever you're at the studio and he wants you to record something?
He usually gave me free rein. So I would come up with, for example, the second record after Master Jam, we went right into Off the Wall. As a matter of fact, my drums didn't even move. Yeah. If he had something that he specifically wanted me to do, he would come out of the control room and walk right up to me, and this is for years. Like he would say something like, you're dancing too much, which means you're playing too much shit. Yeah. Don't do that. And he really didn't like hi-hat activity. Yeah. So in a lot of these modern drummers that are playing this, and all this shit, it doesn't have any bearing on the track. Or another time he would come up and he'd look at my chart and he would, where's your pencil? And he would write a one-bar pattern out that wasn't at all, I hadn't played it. Yeah. He goes, well, look at that pattern, see if you like that pattern. And his penmanship was phenomenal because he was a arranger by hand. What a concept. And so I go, I tried that. He goes, yeah, that's pretty good. Why don't you make it yours though? And that sort of thing. Quick story. Yeah. We're playing the Superdome in New Orleans, huge, sold out. This is 1982. It was, half hour before a show, and he goes, JR, come here. And I'm on the wings. He pulls me out, he got his arm around me, and he goes, see those people way back up in there? And I go, I thought he was going to say that I knew one of them, or they knew me. He goes, they don't give a goddamn what you're playing on your hi-hat. And he turned around and walked away. In other words, he didn't want me to play that busy shit. Yeah. And I go, as much as a drummer, we want to play more stuff in our grooves. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily work. Yeah, it's like the biggest discipline, I think, is how much you can hold back as a drummer. It's like it's the hardest thing in serving the songs, and most of it is just how much you can hold back. What I've learned throughout my career is dealing with mostly female singers. I mean, I worked with a lot of male singers, is knowing when not to step on them. Yeah. Because as we know, as drummers, we can step all over them. And if we're angry, we can destroy anything that's on stage. Of course, yeah. Because we are of that creature. But it's important for us to use our restraint, even though it may be some blazing thing, is you say, serve the song. And I say, just get inside the song. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Thank you. Yeah, well.
Let's talk about the specific projects. You worked on some legendary albums with Quincy, such as Michael Jackson's Off the Wall and Thriller. Michael Jackson, I think off the top of my head, is like one of the most like well-known. How was the session? How did that happen? Was he there?
Yeah, I mean, during Off the Wall, he was still this young, beautiful, almost a man.
Yeah.
Wasn't a man yet. Yeah. And he hadn't started become who he became.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was there. He was shy. He had input. Michael was great. He would always have ideas for me, but he would allow me to be myself and write the kind of drum part that would be indicative of that hit record. And you could tell when I could see them, Quincy and Mike both grooving, to something that I had maybe just come up with. Yeah. I knew that I was achieving what I needed to achieve. I'd worked with Mike all the way until the 90s on Invincible, and I played on a ballad called Cry, and he was kind of, totally changed. He wouldn't come into the studio anymore. He would just drive around in his car and then call me, JR, he'd go, I want you to play a fill coming right out of that second chorus into the bridge, but it's got to be a specific fill. And I know you know what it is. And I was like, click. Okay, oh, JR, Mike, why don't you just come in? Come into the studio, man. Just come sit and guide me if you want with this fill. If not, I'm just going to be playing a bunch of different fills. I trust you. All right, click. Well, there you go.
How would he hear those takes? Like, does he have a recording in his car?
No, I don't know. No, we didn't have that technology then. So it was Umberto Gatica. They would make mixes every night and send them to him.
Let's talk more about memorable moments. Are there any particular moments or sessions with Quincy that stand out and are especially memorable or like impactful?
It was my band, Rufus. It was Bobby Watson on bass and Hawk Walensky on keyboard and the great late David Williams on guitar. We're in a Westlake B, which ironically later, that's where I cut Stupid Love with Lady Gaga. Yeah. They wanted the exact same scenario, but 28 years later, or whatever the hell it was. So we're in there, and it's a small room, man. It's not much bigger than this, a little bit. Yeah. And we're all like looking at each other and, all right, take one, no magic. Take two, no magic. Take three, we're getting a little bit there, and it's kind of, and all of a sudden we're done, we're done, and then we're sitting there, and it's quiet. And you know when it's quiet, something's up. So I look in the control room and I see Quincy stand up and Rod Temperton stand up and start walking and coming into the tracking room. And Rod's got his red Marlboros puffing on him over here, and Quincy's here, and the whole band is over there. And Quincy just looks at me and he goes, JR, can you come up with an intro fill that the whole world will forever identify that this is rock with you? And I just look at him and I go, sure. And he goes, great. Turned around and walked away, and Rod just didn't say anything. They go sit down, and I looked at, and I can see Bobby's like, oh shit, I'm lying through my teeth. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen when I hear the click. And this is take 4. So here we go. In my mind of that 24-second break, I decided to use triplets and straight 16ths and lop them together, which I never liked, 16ths, great, or to me, they don't go together. It's like oil and water. They don't go together. So what do? I put them together. Yeah. And I made it more of a military funky march thing with syncopation, and I hear the click. And that was it. And then everybody, after that fill and the downbeat, everybody just took off. And all of a sudden, magic was in the room, musicality showed up, Bobby's playing some different stuff he never played. It's funkier, it's done. When we got done, they just went like that. And I'm going, we just cut a #1 record. That led into people calling me, were you the drummer on Rock With You? Like Diana would call and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's definitely like a thing. Like whenever you hear that 100%, like you achieved exactly the same request. Like whenever you hear that fill, like everybody knows what that song is.
Exactly. Right? And there's no musical notes, just drumming notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the key.
Let's dive into more like industry insights about like music industry changes. So you say like you were working from like the days of like early Michael Jackson until like you just mentioned Lady Gaga. How has the music industry changed since you started, and how have those changes impacted your work and how you like got work done?
Yeah, to try to condense this, we were rehearsing at Danny Serafin's house in the late '70s with Rufus. You know, Danny and I were very close, and all of a sudden, there's a knock on Danny's door, and it was a guy named Roger Lynn. And Roger Lynn was the one that invented the LM1 drum machine. And he had a little Commodore 64 with a little cassette player and a cassette and a little keyboard. And he'd come in, and Danny goes, "Come here, you guys. Hit that button. Boom. Whoa. Hit this button. Spat! Kick snare coming out of a little keyboard." And he had invented this, like, this is the beginning stages. And so Danny and I are going, well, there's a new tool in the tool belt. Yeah. And so then when the Lynn drum machine came in, I made it a mission not to let that thing get to me or intimidate me. Yeah. And the only way to learn any of that electronics, that was old analog in those days, was to master them. I bought an emulator 2 for $9,200. And I bought everything. I had full Oberheims because I played keyboards. Yeah. So not only was I just doing drums, but I was figuring out what was going on. So for example, the album Bad, I had a multi-track studio in my home in those days with an Atari 24-track and full-on AMEC consoles. And so like a doosh, 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 boom, 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 the way you make me feel. Yeah. I programmed all that on an SP12. Yeah. Wow. And then put it on 24-track tape and then brought it in and then put it up in front of then me playing drums. So that whole record was like that. So I've always learned how to master that tool that's in your tool belt. Yeah. And I knew drummers that were casualties of the digital drum machine. Yeah, they lost work.
Your approach is very smart because you see something, it didn't intimidate you. You wanted to master it as soon as possible and put it under your belt so that you can use it and not let it replace you, which is the right approach, because so many people would just have their insecurity would tap in and say, yeah, I don't want this to be, just get this out of here, or I don't want to see it. And then like eventually, like whenever it will come to place, they will not be able to at least like evolve with the industry, because the industry is ever evolving, because technologies, you have to get with the times or like you'll be left behind.
Right, so you just master it.
Yeah. Let's get some advice from you for aspiring musicians. What advice would you give like young aspiring drummers and musicians who want to make it in the industry, like right now?
You know, there's an old adage about the union. I had to become a member of the union. Yeah. I was a member of the union when I lived in Massachusetts, Local 372 out of Lawrence. Yeah. And then I moved that and transferred over to Local 47. We have a very good pension that was fought for and still sometimes a little iffy, but the musician today doesn't depend on the union for work. And so there are always buyouts. Let's say Billy, he's 24 years old. He gets asked to play, I don't know, some place for a famous singer. Well, they may only be buying him out and nothing going through the union. So my point being is that because of that, then there's no contribution to a future pension. And the young kids need to then start their own 401ks as early as possible, because there may not be any more pension left. That's one thing. It's not just playing drums. And you also need to be as versatile as possible and with an open mind. So it's like, ooh, I really hate playing this. We used to call them GB gigs in Boston, general business gigs or casuals. You got to take it, man. Sometimes you got to take it. If I didn't take all those wedding gigs and GB gigs, I wouldn't have had the brain, my brain wouldn't have been as filled with options that I can apply to other kinds of music. That's one thing. Another thing for drummers is to play with as many bass players as possible. And some you may absolutely despise because they go, no, man, this is one. No. One is where the drummer says it is with his right foot in North American music. There you go.
Thank you so much. This is amazing advice. Let's talk a little bit about collaborations. You collaborated with a wide range of artists across different genres. You were just talking about this. So how would you approach playing in such diverse music settings?
All the drumming specifics always remain the same. Yeah. Because if you start trying to play differently than who you are, your style, then you're not who you are. You have to have that style automatically developed and matured and not have to worry about. In other words, just that doesn't have any bearing. You are who you are. That is you. All right. So then to be able to adapt, then you adapt by, you're still playing the same way. I know that when we get into these recording studios and we have this ambience around us, like we're in a friggin' church room, and it's like, oh my God, bah! You know, but in reality, when you hear that on a microphone, it's not here, it's way away. But that length will confuse you as a drummer, and it'll cause you to play differently, and it'll cause your bandmates to hear you differently. Now, I went through my entire, God, almost like a slut phase, playing to these rooms. Like, oh my God, listen to that. Listen to how this snare drum, all right, I'm gonna use this 1930 Ludwig, how it responds to mics 5 and 6. But, you know, you realize that you still have to be who you are. You have to play within the frame of your style and adjust to the song that you're playing.
You'll be playing a different style, but playing your version of it, basically. Like, you would be a chameleon, but it would still have a part of you, your touch, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. My jazz trio, SRT, is a perfect example. When we cut that record a couple of years ago, but then since then, last summer, we headlined Birdland. Well, I couldn't use my gear, so I'm using backline. Yeah. So there was an 18-inch DW set there that was literally beat to shit. Yeah. And everything's beep, boop. You know, it's the anti-John Good tuning. Yeah. You know, he's just like, God, really? Beep, boop, you know, then I go, you know what? I'm kind of digging this, man. I'm going to set up some smaller shit and have everything like, because I used to love playing bebop drums because they bounce. You can solo differently, and so but the SRT thing is a little bit funkier. Yeah. But I decided to try it, and I just put myself inside on this drum set and let it output to the other two musicians, and it worked. You know, I mean, I could do the same thing with a 26 and a 24 double kick and play the same stuff with this same band. It's conceptually, it would obviously lead them into another path.
Yeah. But your touch is the main thing.
Yeah.
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 What are upcoming projects that you are excited about, and what can we look forward from you in the near future?
Well, this is one of them. Yeah. This is a future project, but this is coming into fruition.
This is J.R. Robinson's new signature model. J.R. has been using our pedals. Let's talk about the history without...
It's got to be 20 years, right?
From the time when Daryl was running the show completely by himself.
That is correct. Yeah. And I was one of the first guys. I was always looking for a direct drive pedal. Yeah.
What pedal did you move from?
I think I moved from a Yamaha Flying Dragon.
Yeah, I heard about those.
Because which I helped develop. Yeah. And I've helped develop more than one pedal. You know, back in 1963, what did we have? I had a Ludwig Squeak King. and it was a direct drive pedal. Yeah. And I go, well, they're onto something. Yeah. However, I remember like oiling the living shit out of the springs, just trying to make it looser. Yeah. And it would never get looser. And when I was at Berkeley, I had a Camco pedal with a leather strap, and then I went over to Frank Ippolito's at Pro Percussion in New York, where I bought that Gretsch set, and he converted it to a sprocket. Wow. And that was the first time I go, wow, this is pretty hip. Daryl and I got hooked up, and he showed me what was developed. And now, if you know, this is basically built off the original pedal.
Yeah, the very first.
The very first one.
Yeah, the skinny shortboard.
The skinny shortboard is now we have carbon fiber.
Yeah, the new model for JR, we swapped the aluminum footboard and we kept the same classic old, very first like model of our pedals, but made out of carbon fiber, and it's engraved with JR's initials, and it's painted with our AXiS classic red color. The pedal has an A cam, which is like our flagship cam. Most of our drummers use the A cam, and it's also equipped with microtune spring tensioner, and also the new spikes, which now will be coming on all of our pedals. The spikes for those drummers that do not prefer the stickiness of the Velcro. So this way you can take it easy a little bit on the Velcro and use the spikes to hold the pedals in place. The first prototype of these pedals was shown off at the NAMM show 2024, but this one is actually a more recent prototype. prototype, which we swapped the laser etching for the initials with actual CNC engraving, which actually today is the first time JR actually has seen this.
Yeah, we developed a new JR logo because, well, my old Chiefs logo was a little too close to the Chiefs. So, but this is my new logo. This will be on the new book. So then the final version of this will be this here, and then we will do personal signatures.
So watch out. This will be available by the time the book is going to be released. You will be able to purchase a bundle of the book and the signed pedal through us or directly through John.
Yes, and the beaters, which we are working on that also. So
this is an early prototype, but this matches the beater that John uses, which is the square felt beater by Danmar. This is kind of a similar design, but it's made out of the Delrin plastic that we have been using for our marksman and wrecking ball beaters, and also the flathead. So it's just a square. It matches the weight that John likes on his pedals.
And then lastly, just because it's this and square, any drummer can adjust this pedal to make it feel like he or she would want. It does so many different adjustments. You know, I like it back a little bit. I've got a big foot, so, but there's certain drummers that may want this angle like this, and this will do all of that. So this is not just my pedal. It's a pedal that everybody will use.
And of course, we were going to make a few stickers available, which are going to give you different sounds. If you want to swap the beater, you can put a sticker that would make it sound like a felt beater, a wooden beater, a leather beater. So it's just going to give you much more options of like different sounds.
So anyway, that was that. Getting to other projects is, of course, the book. Ali and I have been working on this for almost 2 years, and it's called King of the Groove. It's really good. We've dialed it in like to 13 versions. Now we're basically shopping publishers. My goal is to have this by September, and then everybody can then go to johnjrrobinson.com, and you can find links that way, but then it'll be on all platforms.
I'm looking forward to it. I definitely want to get a copy once that's out. I want to read it.
You know, you get inside a project that you do, and like sometimes you just want to walk away. I'm done, man. I don't want to. And then you keep reflecting back on this. And the nice thing about this book is that it will travel with me now forever. The plan is for me, I will be doing seminars about the book, you know, like business lectures and lecturing to companies and colleges about this and what to take away from that. So that's one thing. Another thing I'm doing is, it's called the J.R. Robinson Experience, where all these hit records I've played on, I've actually toured with a singer and a band playing some of these hits. What I may do is alter that slightly and bring in some newer hip material plus these hits without, you know, insulting the integrity of the music. And I'm also now working on, I've got a huge David Foster concert November 3rd at the Hollywood Bowl, where everybody and their mother is going to be on. So I'm the drummer for that. I'm also negotiating with scoring two films, which is coming out now. And I'm still touring with David Foster, which is, I leave for Asia in 2 weeks. And the SRT, the trio with Mitch and Andrew, we've got a couple of gigs. We're playing the Omaha Jazz and Wine Festival in July. We're playing Kumbawa in Santa Cruz at the end of July. There's one more thing. Manu Katché has an Institute of Music in Paris, and it's just about to open up. And so we'll eventually be going over there and educating a little bit through his university.
That's exciting. That's awesome. I'm definitely gonna go check it out if I'm in Paris.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go into the last section of our interview. So about your legacy, how do you hope to be remembered in the world of music?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you know, there's no greatest drummer of all time. There isn't. It just cannot be, because every drummer is different and great in his own or her own way. So I would like to be remembered for always having a great groove and great time, and being an incredible musician, and you know, one if not the most recorded drummer of all time.
Let's talk about personal growth. What has been the most significant lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Yeah, there's a bunch of, they're all significant, because if I've learned it, that means that I made a mistake and was corrected somehow. But You know, the word patience.
Yeah.
You know, we went through a thing in the late 80s, early 90s, part of the 90s as drummers where, hey, I got my part, man. I got my part. You know, how come you don't have your part? Well, that's being impatient,
Yeah.
and not considerate. I remember a beautiful guitar player, Dean Parks, took me aside and told me, you know, you need to listen to the producer and what he or she says, and if they want you to do a second or third or fourth take, do it. You know, because we're still working out our parts, and we're trying to work out our parts to work with you.
Yeah.
Even though you may have your part, is it really final until our parts are final? And the answer is no. So I learned a lot about being patient and listening. So, you know, for all the drummers out there, not only listen to the people around you who are working with you and guiding with you, but listen also in your own personal space. I listen to old vinyl. I listen to our masters. So that's the other way to listen, because listening is 50% of learning.
More about inspirations. What or who inspires you today, both musically and personally?
In my book, I talk about me targeting 5 drummers who inspired me. And I always said, you know, I think I can do what they're doing on record. And one was, to me, one of the greatest of all time is Billy Cobham. And when I first saw Billy Cobham, or heard him actually first, it was like on a McDonald's jingle or something. And I go, this guy is a maniac. He's playing so fast singles that it really scares the living shit out of me. But I go, okay, well, what am I targeting from him? Well, it's the fact that Billy was a funky cat, but he could still play straight ahead. Yeah. And even though he became this unbelievably just mega god drummer. The other was Jeff Porcaro, and I listened to Jeff a lot, and he and I were very close. What I took away from him was his personality shone through the groove. You go, oh, wow, that's Jeff. But I don't hear anybody else. You're hearing the song, and Jeff happened to be playing on it, you know, and Tony Williams and Billy Cobham. My teacher, Ed Sof, was an incredible mentor towards me. There's a nice piece in my book on Ed Sof, and he spells out a lot of different analogies. To me, he's the greatest drum set teacher of all time. And Alan Dawson, and when I started studying with Alan, took me into a whole nother page, and I was becoming a musical drummer. Producers inspired me, like Quincy and Russ Titleman, and working with Hawk Linsky, and even George Martin. I worked with him a little bit, and it was like, you know, these people that I've worked with are the great David Foster, who I'm still with today. I learned something from these guys every day. So it's not like it stops. Everything still keeps going in your life and career.
A couple of fun and unique questions that we want to just ask you before we close our interview. Let's talk about the just unexpected moments. Like, have you ever had any unexpected or funny moments during recording sessions or during live performances that you recall?
I mean, the old days, we're playing the Rose Bowl, 100,000 people. With Quincy Jones Band. I mean, that's how big that record was. And Michael is with us. We're playing and we're playing. It was 1982. And all of a sudden we hear everybody yelling. And Michael gets out and starts crawling up the scaffolding to the speakers, to hang up on top of the speakers while he's singing. This is like pre-billion-dollar Michael. Yeah. You know, so they were worried. I don't know if they were worried as much as if he was going to fall or not. But I'm just sitting there blowing and what. I go, holy shit, don't fall, because then I got to play like a circus groove. Yeah. You know, but I didn't. So that was kind of unexpected fun. You don't see. In the studio, we were doing a second Steve Winwood record. You know, the first one was with Back in the High Life and Higher Love and The Finer Things and Wake Me Up on Judgment Day, Split Decision, Joe Walsh tune. The second record, we did it in Toronto. So I fly from LA to Toronto, and I'm meeting Tom Lord Alge, the engineer, and Steve Winwood. I'm meeting at like a beer, what do you call it, where they make beer on the premises. I don't know what you call those places. And I'd never been to one of those. And I go, where are my boys? Go, oh, they're all downstairs. I go, what's downstairs? Well, downstairs are where the vats are and where they're making the beer. And I go, okay. So little did I know Steve Winwood loved his beer. So I go down there and I find him on the top of one of those giant metallic vats, spraying everybody with beer. And I'm like literally getting soaked with beer, and I'm going, and they go, hey, Chael, welcome. You know, and so I'm like, it's a simple story. And it's always good to be, in the studio with your brothers.
Yeah.
You know, because I've done so much work just by myself. And, you know, when a great producer like Quincy Jones will come up and just give you some sort of a Quincy catchphrase. Yeah. We were doing some record, I think it was Back in the Block. We weren't getting the take again, and it was great. It was Paul Jackson, Neil Stuyvesant, and Greg Fillinganes. And he comes out by himself, and he just looks at all of us, and he goes, man, you guys got to stroke the pussy. And he turned around and walked away, and walked back in the control room, and everybody's looking at each other like, what does he mean, stroke the pussy? And I go, I think I know what he means. And the next take came, that was the take. So that's like production at its finest, you know. It was like, because we were maybe not at one, and then we became at one when he said that phrase.
It's cool to get comments like that. It just makes you even be a more creative musician, just because like you have to just figure out what did he mean, and then like and then express what he meant, not by words, it's just by your playing. Let's ask you the last question. What would be like the JR's favorite piece of equipment? You know, I know that you take the AXiS pedals with you everywhere.
Everywhere I go.
So would those be like your favorite piece of equipment that you can't go anywhere without them and they have to be there?
Yeah, this is Alley. I always have to have my home with my feet.
Yeah.
In North American, my kind of music, it's been a dependency that I have the AXiS foot pedal. So I would say, yes, it is the foot pedal.
AXiS pedals are what basically your feet desire.
It is. I mean, to bring out a certain set of cymbals, or, oh man, I really want my 71 Black Beauty. Yeah. You know, a lot of people have Black Beauties, so I don't have to worry about that. Or am I going to use, you get backline and DW drums, lots of times they'll have really lengthy bass drums. I personally don't like that. It gives an extra overtone of low end that you don't need from a shorter throw. But you can't bring all your drums all the time either. So yes, it's this. Of course, I bring sticks.
Yeah, of course.
But it's basically, it's around the feet.
That's good to know. And we're always very happy to have you, and always very happy to provide you with all the gear that you need. And I'm personally also very honored and proud to have spent this time and heard all these stories. And I'm gonna definitely watch this video again and take notes and like look up every single number, every single place you mentioned, and like learn more about your very inspirational career. So thank you so much for
Zed, man, thank you. And thanks to the company. And you know, when an artist and a company can stay together for a lifetime, is really, really what's important.
Of course, it's all about the long game, and we're always happy that to still have you since one of our very, very first endorsers, and I'm happy to be in a place where I can provide a service and take care of you to the best of my abilities. Thank you to JR Robinson for being with us today, and if you ever need to get in touch with JR, you can always go to his website and contact him. You can email him for any questions, any advices. If you need to work with John, or you need to have more information about where is he performing, when can you see him play live, and there's tons and tons and tons of videos of John performing all over the internet if you just look up John J.R. Robinson.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching us.